All right, let's jump right in. We're zeroing in on a single, really desperate moment in history. You've got the ancient fortified city of Jotapata, and they are staring down the full, terrifying might of the Roman Empire. And this isn't just a story about swords and shields, you know. This is a battle of human ingenuity against the most advanced war machine of its time. I want you to just picture the scene. For days, maybe even weeks, there's been one sound, and it's just constant. This rhythmic, bone-shaking thud of a Roman battering ram hitting stone. The people on that wall, they know it's only a matter of time. But as we're about to see, a wall falling, that doesn't mean the fight is over, not by a long shot. So, let's start with the main antagonist of this part of the siege. And it's funny, it's not a person, it's a machine. It's that relentless Roman battering ram. What's so wild about this thing is the sheer persistence it represents. The historian Josephus, who was actually there, tells us the ram was hitting the exact same spot on the wall over and over and over. This wasn't just some random attack. It was a focused, patient, and absolutely terrifyingly effective demolition job, designed to find one single weak point and just hammer it until it turned to dust. So, how do you stop something that seems unstoppable? Well, you don't try to match its brute force. You've got to try to outsmart it. And this is where the real battle of wits kicks off. This brilliant little tactical back and forth right there at the wall.
I mean, this is a fantastic example of just thinking on your feet. First, the defenders hang these big sacks filled with chaff, basically hay or straw, to cushion the ram's blows. And it works. The force of the ram is just deadened. But the Romans, they adapt instantly. They just stick some hooks on the end of long poles and snip, snip, they cut the sacks right down. So the defenders have to escalate. They rush out of the city with fire, using things like bitumen and pitch to create this massive inferno that just engulfs the Roman siege works. They destroyed in 1 hour what took the Romans forever to build.
But this wasn't just a battle of tactics and machines. No, it was a stage for some of the most incredible, almost unbelievable acts of individual bravery you can imagine. So meet Eleazar, son of Samius. He sees this battering ram just doing its horrible work. So he picks up a massive stone, throws it with so much force that it actually breaks off the head of the ram. And then, and this is the part that just gets me, he leaps down from the wall into the middle of the enemy, snatches the ram's head, and starts carrying it back up. All while, as the quote says, being a perfect target for every single archer in the Roman army. And the cost of that courage? He was hit by 5 darts in his naked body, but he didn't stop. He actually made it all the way to the top of the wall, held up the ram's heads for everyone to see in defiance, and only then did he finally collapse from his wounds, falling down with his prize. I mean, what an absolutely astounding display of boldness. And you know, that kind of courage, it's contagious. 2 brothers, Natir and Philip, they were so inspired by what Eleazar did that they immediately leaped down themselves and charged right at the famous 10th Legion, throwing their ranks into total chaos and actually forcing them to retreat for a bit. So the battle is just this chaotic mix of fire and bravery and desperation. But then, a single projectile, one little arrow, completely changes the entire emotional temperature of the siege. The Roman general himself, the future Emperor Vespasian, gets hit by a dart. Now, the source says it was a pretty minor wound because of the distance, but the sight of their general's blood, it sent this shockwave of panic through the entire Roman army. His own son Titus came running, and for a moment, the whole siege just ground to a halt. But that panic, it very quickly turned into something much, much more dangerous. As you can see here, Vespasian, ignoring his own pain, calmed his troops down. And their fear for his safety just transformed into this white-hot rage, a furious desire for revenge. They weren't just soldiers taking a city anymore. They were an avenging army, and they rushed the walls with this new and absolutely brutal energy. And all of that fury was channeled directly through their machines. What came next was a night of absolute, unrelenting bombardment, where the true, horrifying power of the Roman siege engines was finally unleashed. And here's the really cruel irony of that night. The defenders' fires, the very flames they had used to fight off the Romans earlier, well, now those fires served to light them up perfectly against the dark. They basically became glowing targets for an enemy they couldn't even see, as the Roman engines just hurled destruction from the shadows. To really understand the kind of force we are talking about here, Josephus gives some pretty chilling examples. The stones that were being thrown by these engines, they weren't just knocking people over. In one case, a man standing near the wall was hit.
And his head wasn't just, cut off. His skull was launched a distance of 3 furlongs. That's about 600 meters. That's over a third of a mile. Just let that sink in for a second. The kinetic energy is almost impossible to imagine.
And the devastation was completely indiscriminate. The source describes another horrific event. A pregnant woman just coming out of her house was struck by one of these projectiles.
The impact was so violent that the infant was thrown half a furlong. That's about 100 meters, the length of a football field. I know these details are horrifying, but they're so crucial for understanding the terrifying reality of what this siege was. It was an impersonal, industrial scale of destruction. And the sound itself must have been an assault. Josephus describes this symphony of terror. The groan and the crash of the engines, the whistle of all the projectiles flying through the air, that sickening thud of bodies hitting the wall, the screams of the women and the wounded inside the city, and all of it echoing off the surrounding mountains, creating this inescapable bubble of pure horror.
After a night like that, well, there could really only be one outcome. As the sun started to rise, the entire situation for Jotapata had fundamentally changed. So the crucial point here is just this relentless pressure. The ram went back up in the evening. It hammered that weakened section all night long, without a single break. And by the morning watch, the stone finally just gave way. The wall, the city's main defense, was gone. A breach was open. And through that new opening, the defenders could see Vespasian himself, organizing his legions for the final, decisive attack on the city.
And that really brings us to the core question of this whole story, doesn't it? We've seen unbelievable bravery from people like Eleazar, fighting with absolutely everything they had. But we've also seen the cold, mathematical certainty of the Roman war machine. It kind of leaves us with this big, lingering question. In the face of such overwhelming, unstoppable force, what's the purpose of courage?